In the mid-70s, I was born and raised in the city of Detroit, where cars and music were king. The first automobile I ever rode in as an infant was my dad's 1972 Lincoln Continental Mark IV. My father always owned a Continental, and it was a normal thing for me to see growing up. The earliest memories I relate to the Mark IV is a family outing to Safariland, Canada, where the giraffes stooped their necks low to be hand-fed leaves while visitors drove their cars slowly through the terrain. When we weren't cruising around, my father often drove his Continental to work. On his return home, he'd CB radio to the house his handle, Handyman 1 to Handyman 2, do you read me, over? That was our cue that he was coming in for a landing and to open the backyard gates. However, the least flattering memory was how frequently my dad needed to add oil. Seeing this routine familiarized me with yesteryear's round quart oil cans and the inserting a metal spout to pour. Another thing unforgettable for sure was the long hood on that car. I was only 5 or so at the time noticing, so the Mark IV seemed monster-sized to me. Like any kid, family vacations were one of the highlights of my childhood. As I mentioned prior, my father owned nice cars, but when our road trips became a regular summer occasion with driving further distances, renting a brand new Lincoln made traveling safer and definitely super special to me. Beginning in the years 1980 through 1983, we rented from budget 4 model years of the Mark VI, one for each summer vacation trip. Each year, we'd have a different trim level in sedans and once a coupe. Back then, I was such a little runt that I'd sit on my mother's lap with the air conditioner blowing directly at my face. I loved that Freon smell. As I got a little bigger and safety education became more aware, I'd buckle up either in the middle front or in the back on top of the center armrest. We had a big family of sometimes 6 deep crammed in the car, so I had to make do where I could. Being so young at the time, this experience impressed upon me. I began to associate the Mark VI with excitement and fun times. As a side note, due to discontinuation of the Mark VI, we had to travel with the closest Panther Platform variant on our 1984 summer trip, which was the Lincoln Town Car, but my love would not yet be rekindled. The Mark VI was my first introduction to a new car that I was alert enough to notice. Much like I was too young to remember who or what President Gerald Ford was, my first impression of a president is actually Ronald Reagan. By that time, I was well interested into cars and could differentiate between brands. Therefore, the Continental Mark VI became my example of what a luxury car should be. Compared to our family car at the time, the Mark VI was leaps and bounds more technological, and the styling was literally cutting edge. Apparently, my father was also paying attention, because he then soon purchased a bustle-back 7th generation Lincoln Continental with the digital instrument cluster and in-dash trip computer. I know it wasn't quite my beloved Mark VI, but times were changing for increased fuel efficiency and even smaller cars becoming the norm. Ironically, the Mark VI debuted as the 1980 model reduced in proportion from its predecessor, but it too reached the end of an era for king-size American personal luxury cars. From my youngest days of the 80s, I have come to understand that Ford redefined its nameplates and reclassified what their large and mid-sized cars would be. It almost seemed somewhat of a scramble at the time for Ford to keep up with the changes in the automotive industry. It's amazing to think just how many nameplates joined the Panther platform in its introduction, but within only a few years, some to leave for the smaller Fox platform. For example, the Continental. Ford Motor Company would continue to use the Panther body on frame configuration for many years beyond 1984. The first dedicated town car to Lincoln were so plentiful that I used to envision what body panels and modifications would I need to convert in order to recreate the coveted Mark VI. It was fun imagination game to stimulate my thoughts, but time would eventually bring me to realization the world and every car in it has changed. As the years passed by, I held fond memories of the Continental Mark VI because the sight of one would be a rare occasion. Even during the annual Woodward Dream Cruise, this car is missing in action. Many people consider this installment of the Continental series to be the lost mark. Some car enthusiasts actually refer to the Mark V as the last noteworthy model, but of course, I beg to differ. Yes, the Mark V is beautiful and seamless bumper to bumper, but I believe the Mark VI is a complement of both with benefits in automotive refinement. New developments at the time, including technology and chassis reinforcements, gave improved ride quality along with better fuel economy. Specifications also shows the Mark VI interior and trunk space are larger than the Mark V. It is quite possible that the Mark VI didn't get a fair chance, not because of its looks, but because of what the car represented. Federal regulations. Fun facts. Year 1980. All Continentals shared the Panther Platform. 1980. Continental Town Coupe is rarest Continental on the platform. 1980. First Continental Mark to be offered in a sedan. 1981. Town car trim level upgrades to become its very own model name, Lincoln Town Car. The defunct Lincoln Versailles would be reincarnated into the shortest wheelbase rear-wheel drive Continental for 1982 through 1987, reclassified as midsize. 1982. Continental is offered on 2 platforms until the end of 1983 model year. Continues on Fox Unibody platform until 1987. 1983. Continental Mark VI, final production year. Last body on frame mark in the series. 1984. Continental Mark VII shares the Fox platform with Lincoln Continental. 1986. Lincoln Mark VII drops the Continental name. We meet again. Fast forwarding now to the current era, October 2017, I delightfully purchased my very own Continental Mark VI. The journey was an interesting one, full of emotion and excitement. Thankfully, with the support of my considerate wife, she gave her blessing to proceed with my ambitions. My max budget was $4,000, and I was totally up to venture into a project car. In my research, I quickly discovered that half of that amount could get myself a mystery box, or keep dreaming for double my budget to go turnkey. To be honest, the availability of any good choices in between were non-existent. Either you pick from the bottom of the barrel or way out of reach. Originally, I thought I could secure an affordable option here in the metro Detroit area. My first find was a black Signature Series. The car was kind of awesome, but had been sitting for several months and beginning to become weather-beaten. The business where the car was parked behind a chain-link fence seemed to be abandoned. After inquiring with neighboring businesses about the owner, it was suggested Saturdays is the best day to catch him. No success became of my pop-up visits, so I wrote a letter to whom it may concern via snail mail. One day passing by the building, I saw someone who turned out to be the assistant. I approached him with a pounding heart, hoping to meet the owner. He acknowledged receipt of the letter and informed me the owner took a deposit from a prospect back in the previous season. I asked for my message to be delivered with emphasis that I will pay and tow away same day. However, after silence from the Mark VI owner, I chose to purchase elsewhere. Side note, the owner eventually texted me back with interest after the fact. Next, I found what I thought at the time to be a hidden gem. The car was only listed in one web publication and was located way at the Upper Peninsula in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. The car was two-tone tan and considered by many to be old man colors, but I like that classic 80s look. The Mark VI was beautiful, and from the looks of the photos, it had perfect interior. Anyway, the owner and I exchanged several communications and agreed on $4,000 cash, all Franklin's. In the 11th hour, the guy calls me back to disclose what would be considered minor damage to the driver's side mirror. He sends me a recent pic via text. The mirror was no big deal to me, but the pic revealed the car's true uncapped condition, like it was just thrown in a corner. At the time, it became clear to me his listing pictures were years apart from the current reality. In hindsight, I'm grateful to have avoided the 5-hour drive of what would have been a total shock and an utter disappointment. However, at the time, I was heartbroken and discouraged from the turn of events. I told the guy I lost my enthusiasm and no longer interested in his car. I highly suggested to him to update his listing pics, as this is no longer the same car shown. The car's false advertisement had me blinded for days, and to think I used this as the benchmark comparing to all other limited options. After that waste of time, I realized my max budget still could only get me a stinking Lincoln. So, as the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them. Finally, I decided a fixer-upper is the best way to go. Browsing all the usual online classifieds, I found the least likely match in comparison to where I started. I contacted an older gentleman from Youngstown, Ohio, who listed the car on Craigslist. From what it seemed, I thought he was a private owner, but to my surprise, it turned out to be a used car lot with an ironic name, Ding's Auto Sales. When I first saw the car in person, I nicknamed it Chalk because the paint was white and dull. It's an old-school Carbureted V8 with white interior and cranberry carpet. The best part about the car is that it has all its original equipment and no obvious dings. Even though it started up, it wasn't road ready to travel across state lines. After paying for the automobile, I ordered car carrier service to truck it back to Michigan. The moment my Mark VI arrived home, I began cleaning, waxing, and notating all the issues that I needed to address. The most important initial repair must be to replace the gas tank and fuel lines. After that, it's a running checklist of maintenance. Over time, I'm sure to pay in repairs what I didn't for the car, but at least I didn't take a hit all at once. Right now, I'm excited for 2018, upcoming spring, so I can get my Lincoln mechanically ready for the Woodward Dream Cruise. No matter the automotive world opinion about the Continental Mark VI, I have the eye of the beholder. 1980 Lincoln Continental Mark VI, 5.8 liter, 351 Windsor V8. Purchased October 14th, 2017.